guys, welcome back to episode number 8 of the Dope Stroke podcast. Took a little bit of heat last episode. I'm sure you guys heard it. Mr. Darrell Evans is joining me and Chris Ryan. Today we do have a special guest. I'm going to get to that. Did take a little bit of heat from the dog in the last session. So today, those of you watching on YouTube will notice I am at the KBS Golf establishment, which is player-driven, tour-proven, which perfectly ties into today's guest because I'm joined by Wirral Massive inductee. Not absolute Wirral Massive, but he's in there for his Hall of Fame stuff that he has achieved with Paul Waring, who obviously is We Are Wirral proud. The man today actually got me a loose Challenge Tour card back in about 1985, so he gets credit for that too. He's helped countless amateurs, countless mini tour players. He's helped top 50 players in the world. He's one of those behind-the-scenes guys that people don't realize are there until you turn up at a World Golf Championship and he's cruising around, staying behind the scenes, doing great work. It's Mr. Lee Crombleholme from Winning Golf Mind. Lee, first off, congratulations, because you are the psychologist for Paul Waring.
Cheers, Trottie. Yeah, that was rather nice, that one, to be fair. It was a fantastic week. Started off great. He's been playing good for a while, to be fair, and it was only a matter of bringing it all together. And he just happened to bring it together on one of the bigger weeks on the DP World Tour. Excellent timing as well. So, yeah, all good.
So, Lee, with that sort of move that he made right at the end there, which has now secured a PGA Tour card, will you end up spending a lot more time over there? But you do a lot of stuff in America anyway. So I'm just trying to think about how your life changes, if at all, with this fact that Paul's obviously gone on to do so well.
Well, I'd go over once a month anyway to see Matt Wallace, who's obviously playing out on the PGA Tour. I've worked with him, in this run for about 2.5 years now. We worked previously. And they're both going to be on that same schedule, which is the non-elevated event or signature events or whatever they're calling it this year. So yeah, but they're both going to be playing pretty much exactly the same schedule. So rather than me going over to just see Matt, I'll be going over to see Matt and Paul, which is obviously, much better. It's great. So happy days.
So I lost a little bit of audio there, slight technical issue, but we're back. I had my mate actually from the Wirral calling me, but thankfully I'm back in the room now, Lee, so we've got you. But just so I can catch up a little bit here, you have that great victory, you have that win. Obviously, you work with Matt Wallace as well. I just heard you covering that, which now gives your schedule the same thing. When these guys come to you, or when any customer comes to you, are they playing well? Are they generally playing poor? I can obviously speak from personal experiences that, and I want to give a bit more context to that. That was the goal. You and I worked together many years ago when I used to play, and I think I've just done some time with Short Game Chef Paul. I've just done some time. I'm all over the show. Parker McLaughlin out in Arizona, and we worked on Short Game. One of the things he spoke about though is he gets a lot of people that are returning to golf after having kids, starting a family. They've been good players, then they're coming back. Are your clients that, or are they predominantly tour players?
Right now, because I travel so much, I probably do 25 tournaments a year. So I'm kind of slightly different to a lot of the sports psychologists that are out there. I do like to travel to tournaments and see my clients face to face. In answer to your question, are they usually in a good spot when they come and see me for the first time? No. There's probably only Matt Wallace who, when we first started working together in, I think it was 2018 or 17 or something, he'd won about 3 weeks before, but he knew that it was whatever the Open was at Carnoustie around that time, 17, 18. He called me and asked to see me because even though he just won, I think he just won his second event or something, he knew that he wanted to get better mentally. And he is literally the only one that has ever rung me up when they're not kind of at the lowest ebb. Because when a tour player starts to struggle, they will look at the technique. Obviously, they'll start to look at the golf swing. They might change coaches, they might change caddies. But then, they're still struggling with building confidence, and that's where someone like myself comes in. So we put programs in place that get them to practice a bit more efficiently, probably. I'm just talking generally, but in order to, you can't guarantee an increase in confidence, but you can significantly roll the dice in your favor for improving confidence by setting challenges and stuff in practice. And then just general counseling as well, trying to get them to recall when they were playing the best and what kind of things they were doing. So that kind of stuff. And then once you've got started the confidence cycle, then you've got to start looking at how they deal with pressure, at the other end of the leaderboard. And so we kind of goes through little phases like that, really.
What's your preference? Is it to have someone playing well, or is it to have someone playing poorly? And then is pressure at the top of the leaderboard the same as pressure of trying to make the cut?
It's very similar, to be honest. Because it's a human thing rather than a golfer thing. So the perceived threat response or anxiety or whatever, they happen at both ends of the scale, but just for different reasons. But they're just threats. So helping a player recognize the threat, be aware of the threat, know that the threat is there, and trying not to. One of the key things is, people try and get rid of the threat. They might start to wish that threat away, or wish the emotions away or the thoughts. It's the worst thing that you can do, isn't it, Trottie?
I have those threats with my wife and kids and dog. So is it the same advice for them as it is for the golf course?
No, you're better off just you're better off just going to the golf course when all that's going on. You can take the dog.
Yeah, Josh, he steals all the balls, the little shit, I tell you.
So Lee, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this. You're obviously working with some incredibly elite players. And there's going to be people listening to this podcast now who have the same issues, but on a different level. They might be on the 15th hole on for their best ever score, and they feel the pressure that Paul Waring would have done a couple of weeks ago on Sunday. So what you do with someone like Paul Waring and the tactics and the skills that you develop with him, is that pretty much the same as with an average golfer, or is it a slightly different model that you use?
It's exactly the same. The model I've created over time, and is a human model. It's for humans, not just golfers. So you can use it if you're in motorsport. You can use it if you're trying to pass exams. You can do it whether you're an amateur trying to get your handicap down from 20 down to 18, or whether you're trying to win a Rolex event, or playing a Ryder Cup. They're exactly the same things.
Yeah,
there might be some little kind of slight changes with the goals that you would set, but they run through a consistent theme for sure.
Well, one of the questions I was going to ask you is, have you ever had any either tour player or just general player who you've worked with for their golf, who've come to you 6 months down the line and said, you know what, that's really helped me with my work environment or my social side of things? Or do you find that it can sort of bleed into other areas of someone's life and actually improve other aspects?
Absolutely. And I openly encourage that. And from the start, I will explain to them that not only will this help your performance, but it will also help you in your general life as well. I've worked with kids over the years who might have some exams coming up, and we talk about it. We talk about doing the same structure, getting organized, organizing your time, knowing that the threat comes from often a lack of preparation. So absolutely, it's, and in the work environment, off the back of working with some golfers, I've worked in some businesses historically. I mean, I don't hugely have time for it at the moment, but I ended up working in quite a few recruitment consultancy companies quite a few years ago. which I've thoroughly enjoyed because it's all the same stuff. It's human performance.
Just thinking about that actually, and just rewinding it a little bit back to some of the guys that you start working with in the beginning. Now, obviously, they come and see you. They need that confidence sort of shot in the arm, should we call it, and all the strategies to help them cope in different situations on a golf course, whatever their situation might be. But they're also then going to see their golf coach, potentially making a change to their golf swing. Maybe there's some more tactics and strategies that are taking place, and their fitness trainer and their physio, they're doing some work on the body to try and help them get into different positions, whatever it might be. There's a whole range of contributing factors that can help improve or not improve, as the case may be, performance. So I'm quite keen to figure out how do you measure this? You can measure it in terms of how many birdies and what your score is and how much money you make at the end of the year, and I get all that. But how are you able to demonstrate to somebody, hey, yeah, your confidence has gone from this to this, or is this more honest reflection type thinking that the individual, in this case the golfer, would have to go through?
If your bank balance goes up, I'm sure it's a fantastic barometer, Daryl.
No shit, but that's what I'm trying to ascertain is where do you position that, right? You can easily work out how many times.
It depends how many times the investment section of the bank call you. If they call you 3 times a year, then you're doing really good.
Well, nobody's calling you, Trottie. That's all you need to know right now, yeah?
Why do you think I called Lee?
To improve your bank balance. I imagine Lee's on a commission of your on-course earnings, and we both know that's pretty dog shit at the moment with your golf game, right?
Listen, people in glass houses can't be saying bugger all.
I know where I sit, mate. I know what I do. Anyway, Lee, back over to you, yeah?
Yeah, no, honestly, Dazzler, it's a great question. It's because like the psychology, I call it an invisible skill. It's an invisible process. It's not like a golf swing where you can put it on a camera, you can put some lines on, and you can see the change. Or you go into the gym, and as you can see, I'm massively into going to the gym, and so it's not the case. But you
podcast,
can tell
Lee. Lee, it's a podcast, mate. They can't see you. You could look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. You're there 6 days a week, pal.
Ripped.
Well, I am, yeah. My body's a temple of doom. But with the gym stuff, that you can objectively measure those improvements because you can lift more, blah blah blah. But what I do have is I have self-reflection feedback forms that I've created over the years for tour players. There's two that I use primarily. One's a mastery versus ego feedback form. So you've got the mastery side of the game, which is appreciating the nuances of the game, and then and it's more process based. But then the opposite end of the scale is the ego side, which would be more outcome based, and it's like what we call a Likert scale. So it's 0 to 10. So you can opposite kind of opposite statement. So it might be I was very process focused, I was very score focused. So rate yourself from 0 to 10. That one's about 22 items. And then I've got another one which is the 12 mental, primary mental skills or something like that. I forget what I call it. And the players rate themselves with like confidence, mental pre-shot routines, how they talk to themselves, how their levels of acceptance of what the golf ball does, and also their acceptance of how they are feeling and thinking. When they fill those in, it gives us their perceived value for those, and that's there's no real measure that you would want to do for confidence and and all these skills, but we have a go with them.
Yeah.
So just by getting the player to feedback to themselves on a regular basis, we create a learning cycle. And my thing is I don't like telling players what to do. I'll ask them questions and draw out kind of the answers that they want and what they can run with. We find that adherence to any kind of program works a lot better that way, specifically with the mental game.
Mm-hmm.
How long do you usually work with someone, and what's your longest serving client?
You, Trottie.
Yeah. Yeah, he's stuck with me.
Worst client ever.
I mean, well, I've worked with Paul Waring for probably be over 10 years. I've just started back with Andy Sullivan again, who we've worked on and off for probably similar. I've worked with Kiradek for probably about 7 years, 8 years. I kind of lose track. Matt Baldwin, worked with him since he was a teenager. So a lot of the guys.
With the golf swing,
time.
With the golf swing, you can have like an imprint, and Bubsy can maybe talk on this a bit more, but you have things that you do as a golfer as you become better and better, and they're like your thumbnail, they're like your fingerprint of your golf swing. You know what I mean? Your thumbnail's pretty good enough. But in this day and age, Bubsy, of social media, your thumbnail's good enough. But they're your DNA as to what you do. So with the mental game, is it the same thing that people can often trip up over the same things on given weeks? Is that a pattern that you see?
Absolutely, and that's why I travel so much, because what we're doing is we're taking some bad habits, and trying to evolve them into better habits. So over time, you need to keep on top of them, because the golfer's DNA will want to revert back to the old patterns and old habits. So that's why I travel so much, is because I want to keep on them.
But some of these old habits have got these players to where they are, though. Like, for example, I have an arsehole counter for when I play. How many times I call myself an arsehole, and it's a lot. And if if that counter goes below a certain number, then I drop off peak performance the other way. Like, it needs to be a healthy amount each 18 holes. So, is there sometimes some negativity that's a good thing as well, in order to get you into a state where you need to be to perform?
Well, just before you answer that, Lee, that kind of leads into my question, so you can answer mine and Trottie at the same time, if that's all right. Tyrrell was in the news a fair bit last week because of his antics. He broke a club. He said some things. So to Trottie's point, if you took Tyrrell's level of frustration and took it to zero, would he struggle then to perform at the same level? Which I guess is what kind of Trottie was saying. Is it trying to find that happy balance or happy medium for everybody?
Yeah. Again, you're working with the person. You're not working with the golfer. Now, someone like Tyrrell, he loses his shit, left, right, and centre. He's okay with that. Sometimes he takes it over the top. Yeah, and he would probably admit to that. But he's world class at refocusing. That he's so good at just, it's cathartic for him. He needs to get it out. John McEnroe was the same in tennis, for those of you who are of a certain age. But we see people in different sports all the time who need to get it out, and then they become the characters. But historically, in sport there was a load of those kind of guys. Look at Michael Jordan. Do you think he would have been as good if he wasn't going around telling everyone at the Chicago Bulls to pull the socks up and get stuck in? There has to be that level of arousal where a player can perform at their peak. Now it's different for everyone. It's different for everyone. You wouldn't, if Matt Wallace was going around like, I don't know, name a really calm golf, someone,
Freddie Couples.
Someone like Freddie Couples, yeah. Would he play, to the level that he is doing? No, he wouldn't, because he needs to be amped up to a certain level. Obviously, and like anyone who's like that, it can spill over. The skill is getting it back and being able to focus on that next shot. So it depends on the person's personality, and where they live within that kind of boundary. You know,
And
it's,
how?
it's a broader boundary than people think.
I assume
because,
it's a. Yeah, that sounds really interesting, Lee. So I assume when you're thinking about it that way, it's like there's a tipping point sort of both ways. So you can either be too relaxed and underperform, or over aroused, using your word, to underperform as well. Like that window might be quite narrow, but I assume, and correct me if I'm wrong here, it's probably a lot easier from your standpoint to work with someone who's more likely to sort of tip over the edge, so that therefore you can pull them back into that frame of mind, as opposed to try and push them forward into that more aroused mindset. I'm just curious to how that works, because sometimes I go and play golf, and sometimes I'm right up for it, and it's great, and then other times I just can't get myself motivated to make another freaking bogey, to be honest. But how do people operate in terms of that environment? Oh, Troy's got his hands up again. Let's say that for him.
If a 130 ball speed is arousing, then frick, I mean, good for you.
Show off.
It's actually 135. I'll have you know.
Stop showing off.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, a good example of that. Well, a couple of examples. If you've ever walked a practice round at a tour event with a player, and I'm sure most of us here have, players get bored in practice rounds, and they get bored and they start hitting loose shots, or it might be late on in a pro-am or something like that. Plus, also, so that shows that they're under aroused, if you like, and before Trottie starts coming up with some smut. And then, but then, a couple of years ago when Matt Wallace was in the playoff at Cron against Tristan Lawrence, he said, I was working with him then, but he actually said in an interview, so I can say it. He went into that playoff really flat, and obviously got beat. And then when he was in the playoff a few months ago, he was like man possessed. He was just like, this is happening. I am, his manager, Greza, said, right, get focused now. Get focused for this playoff. And he was just like the Matt Wallace that we know, is like just tunnel vision right into it. And then he obviously birdied that first playoff hole to win. So, yeah, it's most these guys are competitors, Dazzler, so they don't they don't really often need bringing up, because they want to compete. You might see it after if they've got 3 holes left and they're way off the cut, then they'll go flat, but they'll generally be right on it, and that's why they're playing on the tours, the best tours in the world. Now, the ones who overcook it and go past that tipping point, there's different things that we can do to help bring them back, but often the reason why a player will go over the tipping point is because they start trying to push away the frustration, the anger, the emotion, and then they start thinking about the emotion over and over again, and they end up in this loop where they're just thinking about the emotion, and they forget to hit the bloody shot that's in front of them.
Yeah,
and that's the key. That's the absolute key for myself of helping someone to increase their ability to deal with the stress and pressure of performing. And it's exactly the same if you're a 20 handicapper playing in a monthly medal on a good score. It's exactly the same.
With a 130 ball speed.
Yeah. I had a question, but now I'm going to ask a few questions here because, so first off, like I can very much
just
relate.
do them one at a time, Trottie. I'm not very clever.
First off, I can relate to that. So for me, I'm an open book. I'm going to say it. I don't care. I'm going to talk about it. It is what it is. I feel like if I can get through it openly is fine, and I'll tell you everything that I'm thinking. You mentioned Matt Wallace said something in an interview, so you could then say it. So there's obviously been conversations that you've had over two or 3 decades now, 2.5 decades you've been doing this, which is fantastic as a coach. So that's the second part of this question. We're going to get to that. These players have opened up and said things to you. Now, as a coach, that's an amazing skill to be able to get that out of the best players in the world. Because when I'm dealing with some of these guys for equipment, the feedback is poor. How they verbalize what they're seeing and feeling is poor. So obviously with a launch monitor, and with the tech that's around you, which makes it only fitting that today, just again to remind everyone who can see this on YouTube, KBS, player driven, tour proven. That's where we're at today. Shout out to my good friends at KBS. But just to say, Lee, for the point that they're poor communicators, some of these. You've been doing this for 3 decades. How have you had people talk about some of their inner emotions, fears, strengths, weaknesses to get them to then win? I mean, what skill can we take as coaches or as business owners and leaders, as our bald friend in the top right corner as I look at the screen? What can we take that can help us day to day?
It's about knowing how to ask the right questions, and obviously in my role, because I'm bound by ethics, I can't divulge information. So there's an element of trust there. And, I'm all, the guys always say that I'm very personable. I've been around the game for a long time. Sports psychology is a passion. I went to university knowing what I was going to do. So, and that's quite rare for people who go to university knowing exactly what they want to do. So, the passion's there. That feeds through into the player. They're paying me in order to help them, and I explain to them all I want. First of all, is honesty and work. That's it. And what what they will get from me is trust, confidentiality, and bloody hard work. And if there's issues that we struggle to kind of figure out, I'll go out and I'll research and I'll find a way to deal with it, and that's just we're always learning. I don't claim to know everything about performance psychology, but if something comes up, I'll bloody go and read up on it, find out, just to improve. And so we're all improving together, that's basically how I would answer that. I ask good questions of them, and I draw the information out of them. There's no point in. I have worked with a couple of players who I found it really hard to communicate with, and it just doesn't last very long because we're wasting each other's time.
I think that's,
they shall remain nameless before you ask, Trottie.
Yeah.
You know,
I think that comes. I'm a coach as well, obviously a different sort of coach to yourself, but I think that comes with a bit of maturity as a coach, isn't it? You don't expect to have great relationships with every player. It's a maturity to say, do you know what, maybe we're not a great fit. I want to just, if I can, bring it back to, again, the listener and the person who's listening to this podcast, recreational golfer, loves their golf, wants to perform better, probably, gets nervous when there's a crowd of more than 3 people on the first tee, gets really nervous when they're on for a good score. I appreciate that the stuff you do is not a quick fix. It takes time. But for that golfer who's going to go and play golf this weekend, are there any actionable things that you can give them that might just start them on that journey to being a little bit more mentally strong? I know you've got a website, Winning Golf Mind. You do online training. That can obviously help them. Talk a little bit about that business, but then how can the average golfer at the weekend implement some stuff that will help them earn 1.5 million like Paul Waring?
Yeah, I mean,
just the 1.5, Lee. Just the 1.5.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. Not bad, was it?
That's what we want. That's what we want. The general follower of Bubsy, Chris Ryan Golf, to be earning right here. So come on, Lee, give us the gems.
Well, they need to go to winninggolfmind.com. But no, I mean the website. My online academy thing is basically directed at club players, amateurs, enthusiastic amateurs, and so. But the first thing, you talk about first tee nerves, players getting nervous in front of more than 3 players. That is normal. We need to normalize nerves and pressure and anxiety. It's a human emotion, and this is the big point. Never try and shove it away. Never try and push it away, because as soon as we start to push it away, then we start focusing more and more on that emotion, and that's the worst thing that you can do. Accept it, sit with it. If you're nervous on the first tee, it's okay. Every single golfer that I know, whenever I ask them this question, have you ever been shitting yourself and still hit a great shot? for your level? And they all say yes. I'm like, well, there you go. That is the proof. That is the proof that you can still hit a golf shot. Anxiety, although it might feel uncomfortable, it's not negative. It's all anxiety is from a physiological point of view, it's adrenaline, right? We need adrenaline. It's part of the fight and flight response. It's part of the ancient part of the brain that gets us ready to go and fight something or run away from it. It's a safety mechanism. So it's our friend. And if we then experience that on the golf course, then it's doing it for a reason. It's getting you either ready to fight and compete. This depends on how you perceive things, or it's getting you to run away. Now, the third one is actually the freeze response, which is a spin between fight and flight. So when we get in there, we often see that one on the first tee when players freeze, especially higher handicappers. But these things are normal. I have to keep banging on about that. But what you then have to do is just accept that that's there, and then get back present and focus fully on the shot. Because the three main things that we can work around, and this is a really simplified version, is every player wants to get into what we call a flow state, right? So we've all experienced it, where the game of golf is really easy. It might have been for maybe just 2 holes in Trottie's case, but the rest of us, we've probably experienced it for 18 holes. And what the 3 main triggers for this flow state in golfers, or it could be a mechanic in Paris, just any kind of job, because it's a human thing. Number 1, it's focus, total immersion in the task at hand. Being present is number 2. Being focused here on the here and now. And number 3 is having what we call a towards or pursuit mindset, as opposed to the opposite, which is the avoidance mindset. So the towards mindset is where we focus on the shot that we want to hit, as opposed to the shot that we don't want to hit. Now, when I played college golf in America, that third one, and I'm going back many years to the early 90s, that third one is what I really struggled with. I went from playing 6,000 yard Haydock Park Golf Club, in Merseyside, with hardly any water on it, to playing these golf courses that were 7,300 yards with water everywhere. And I was world class at going, do not hit it in the piss. Do not hit it in them trees over on that left-hand side. And I couldn't figure out, because this sports psychology thing wasn't really around then. So I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what it was, and I wanted to see a sports psychologist who was working with the basketball team. That never happened. So I packed that in. Packed that in and came back home to Liverpool to study sports psychology and sports science and applied psychology. So getting back to those 3, focus. These are your flow triggers. If you can nail these 3, then you're more likely to get into flow, no matter who you are or what level. It's focus on the shot, presence, and that towards or pursuit mindset, and focusing on the shot it could be dialing into your start line. It could be dialing into your target. It could be dialing into a feel in your golf swing. Everyone's different, and those things change and develop over time as well. Presence is presence. Our brain is a thinking machine, so we're going to get out the present. So I always put it as, do we know how to get back into the present? And one of the easiest things you can do there is either focus on your breathing, or ask yourself the question, what do I want to do now? That will bring you back into the present.
I remember working with a coach many years ago on the golf course. This was back way in the day, younger days. And we're on the course, and I said, I feel like I'm going to hit it in the crap on the right. And he said to me, you've got to be more positive. I said, I'm definitely going to hit it in the crap on the right. Is that not? I felt like that was when I needed to hang up the clubs and start coaching.
Lee,
it's powerful,
Lee,
the avoidance thing, but recognizing that first of all, you've got to be aware that thought is in there, and then you've got to kind of, what the best thing to do is just almost laugh at it. because it's only your emotion. It's your emotion center trying to protect you. It's saying don't hit it into the crap down the right-hand side, or don't hit it in the water down the left. It's if you think about it, it's actually true. You don't want to hit it there. So if you just laugh at it and then go, right, no, what do I want to do with this golf ball? What does a good shot look like? What am I trying to do? You know, and then what's my target? And then go back into that. It's when we overly pay too much attention to the thoughts that go on in our minds. That's when we get caught up, rather than just letting those thoughts wash through.
Why are some of us better at some things than we are at others? Why, as individuals, are we skilled at certain things, yet certain tasks can be so difficult? And I'm sure that there are basketball players, football players, baseball players, cricket players listening to this, and they're like, well, I'm great at those sports, but I can't hit a 5-yard carry, 6-yard run out chip. Why are we so good at certain things and other things we find so difficult?
There's so many variables in when you look at different sports. You know, golf is what we call self-paced. You decide when to hit it, so it's not a reaction sport. Now, reaction sports like a return in tennis, or in football or soccer, as you call it now, Trottie. You know,
I'm just appealing to my US audience.
I know. But if a cross has come in, has come in from Mo Salah, and big Van Dijk's just wanting to wallop it in with his head like he's done on many massive occasions, then he doesn't really have time to think about it. They just react, and so you're almost taking the thinking out of it. Now with golf, obviously the golf ball is stationary, and there's very few sports where the ball is stationary. So that's why we need these little mental pre-shot routines. It's almost like a domino effect, with the end result being starting the golf swing, but there has to, a small sequence of events. It might be looking up, standing at the ball, looking up at the target, then looking at the golf ball, and then starting the golf swing. So it might be like A, B, C, or 1, 2, 3. So, listeners out there can have a work on that. And then if it goes A, let's look at the target, B, look at the ball, and then there's a big gap between B and C, that big gap between B and C gives the brain opportunity to overthink consciously, and that's when people start to put a bad move on it. So you'll see a lot of players, tour players. Davis Love III was amazing at it. Colin Montgomery was amazing at it. Even Tiger, Tiger was great at every bloody aspect of the game. But all these players, the sequencing of let's look at the target, look at the ball, and then when they start the actual swing would be so consistent. Now, I'm not one for you only have one look at your target or one look at the hole, or your target on the green. If you want to have 3 looks sometimes and then 2 looks another time, that's fine in my world. The key is the last look at your target to the ball and then starting the golf swing or the putting stroke.
Lee, I think the best thing I can say about you as I think about how we conclude on this, you've been amazing in my life. I'll be honest, mate. We've known each other a long time, and I think for any coach you can have a relationship with over 2.5 decades and still return and it feel like yesterday is just truly credit to yourself. And I talk about me because at the end of the day, I am relatable to the layman. You work with some of the best players in the world. I am not that, and you still help me find the level that I want to be. So personally, it's been awesome. Before you go, we have 2 questions here for you. One, I'm going to make them quick fire. One is, because we have to think about it, because we've all got kids now this side of the podcast, as I know you have too. What's the youngest age you like to get someone so you can work with them?
I think you can start from about 10. I think if you can start to get some of these little nuggets and bits and pieces in place from 10 years old, then they've got them as life skills. They have got them as life skills, but it doesn't have to be 10. That's not an absolute perfect, but that would be kind of the earliest I would say that you would go. My daughter swims, and I help her quite a bit with the focus side of swimming. You know, when she first started competing, she was looking in the other lanes, and you know, it distracts her. But now she'll just kind of focus on her lane and do the best, you know, technique and keep driving forward that she possibly can. You know, she's 10, you know, so I would say around 10 years old would be the earliest. Ideally, it doesn't matter. You can teach an old dog new tricks. You know, I've worked with many players who, you know, tour players and amateurs who have come to me when they're, you know, in the 30s and they improve. Richard Blank came to see me a number of years ago and he'd always been, you know, always finishing around 95, between 95 and 110, and he finished 31st, you know, on the order of merit. The first time he'd broken out of that barrier of trying to keep his card, you know, and he was in his 40s when he did that.
So it's amazing.
There's hope for everyone, you know. But I've worked with an amateur about 3 years ago. We just had one session. He was in his 60s, and he hadn't played to his handicap for 18 months. He was at the end of his tether, and we did one session, rearranged his goals, got him out of outcome goals and worrying about his handicap and being more process focused. We ended up giving him 3 process goals, and he shot a net 62. And he was in his 60s. You know,
Fucker would have done that against me, getting 10 shots, I bet you, bastard. And then the final point, we like to keep it a little jovial here. We are running a top 10 beers in the world list, and I know you're going to have some good ones to add to this, especially with all the recent success and the past success. To give you some examples, we've had Piers Ward, who had an Alex Ferguson Sweet Bar, Man United. I'm not sure that gets number 1, but it's in there. I had a Wet the Baby's Head beer on a ferry from Hong Kong main island to Discovery Bay that was down. I actually had 2 of them. That was fantastic. Ozone Bar beer in Hong Kong again. Bubsy had a bed beer when he got all his kids to bed one night that was fantastic. It might have been a Cinzano. Daryl had a Castle Lager overlooking Table Mountain. And then Bubsy's got another one in here of Barbados on his honeymoon where he enjoyed that beer and some overly aroused activities afterwards, I'm sure. So do you have any beers that you can add to our top 10 list, brand and location and meaning, that are some of your most memorable beers in all the success story you've had?
Do you know, there's been a lot.
You did the whole top 10.
Yeah, you can have your own top 10 if you want.
I mean, a load of players say, "Who counsels you, Lee?" I say, "Mr. Heineken," or you know. But there is one that does stand out. It was when it was 2012 when Brandon Grace won the Dunhill Links. I think it was his 4th win that year, and I'd done the practice days, and then me and the missus had gone to Portugal to Vilamora for a few days break. So on the Sunday we were watching it in a bar, and it was a Sagres, and we were just watching it, and then he won, and you know, for his 4th win in that breakthrough year, and we had a bottle of bubbles on the go, but I had a Sagres as well. So yeah, that was in. I can't remember which bar it was. I don't think it was the 19th hole in Vilamora, but it was a bar of similar ilk. It might have been the 19th hole in Vilamora, but yeah, that was a special one.
So Brandon Grace, 4th win in the year, Vilamora bar, and it's Sagres, Lee Crombleholme. I think that gets in. That's a good one. That goes up there. We'll rearrange this order when you're not present, but that definitely gets into the top 7 or 8 we got so far. Mate, awesome. And anyone who wants to find out about Lee, Winning Golf Mind, we'll put everything down in the description below. He's got some parent duties to take care of. The 3 of us will wrap up this podcast and summarize everything. But Lee, fantastic as ever. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Cheers for the questions.
No worries. Thanks for your time.
So there you have it, Lee Crombleholme. What a fella. We've brought you Psychology this week. And, of course, it's been powered by, once again, everybody, KBS Player Driven Tour Proven. Some good friends of mine. It's nice we didn't have the dog interrupt us for once, boys.
Very true. And I feel like I need to be shouting out the Rocket Yard office here, and Bubs needs to be, you know, talking about the Chris Ryan app behind. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, well, just me taking care of partners. You lads are shite. We knew that.
Yeah, I just broke the deals, mate.
What do you make of that conversation, lads? You take a lot away from that?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I quite liked is actually that when he was talking about that sort of go-to mindset, that forward mindset, because I definitely feel that. Like, I know this even down in the business capacity. I go for a meeting, and there's just some meetings I go, yeah, I'm going to dominate this. I'm in for this conversation. I go in and I get ready, and I leave feeling that way. And there's other times where it's almost like the situation can feel like it's a bit intimidating around you, and actually you just underperform. So I think what he was talking about on that sense, just for me in what I do day to day, I can resonate. I can relate to what he was saying. So for a golfer who is going towards a positive outcome, I think is for me that sort of resonated completely.
I agree. I think what I was really interested about, and I was kind of wanted to ask him in a little bit more detail, but Trottie kind of covered it. Obviously, I've got twin boys who are 6 years old, and Trottie's got kids, and you, Daryl, have got kids as well. You know, we kind of hear these anecdotal stories about Tiger and his dad and what he used to do with him as a kid, and he turned out to be just incredibly mentally strong athlete. So I think just a lot of the stuff that Lee said, I do want to start implementing that into my boys' golf. You know, sort of getting them to sort of focus on the target and, you know, not worrying about the trouble and being super focused on what they're trying to do. I'm not going to go into that much detail, but I think, you know, for anyone listening who's got kids, whether it be getting them into soccer or football or rugby or cricket or whatever it may be, you know, I think it's such an important aspect. And I think you can do probably a lot of harm in those early years, saying the wrong thing and getting them to focus on the wrong thing. So I'm definitely going to reevaluate kind of how I talk to my boys about golf and getting them to just start to do the right thing now.
It's a difficult one. I would say that with my son is into his sport, and definitely with golf, I'll be honest, to give myself a pat on the back here. And you know me, boys, I'm harsh on my own performance. But as a parent with golf, I've been good with him. I've literally given hardly any swing advice and just been smack it there. And if the ball doesn't go there, I'm like, go smack it again. Like, just who cares? And that's been brilliant. Now, football, soccer, is his main love. And we've actually sat down and watched The Last Dance together. And he's only a nipper too. And, you know, you see then, Lee touched on it, Michael Jordan, the way he pulled out the most from his teammates. And I was watching practice last night for my son, and he was very much, he plays striker, so he was waiting for service. And, you know, it was for a young kid, it was a lot of heat on the players around him, to the point where I was like, maybe you need to address how you're speaking to the others, and it needs to be a bit more positive rather than get the ball here, do this, do that. But, you know, if you look at Michael Jordan, it wasn't always positive when it was the teammates around him. But if the ball comes to you, you better make it work. So I don't know. It's interesting. I think there's life lessons for us all to learn there on and off the golf course, as we all allude to. I think that is a fantastically strong entrant into the top 10 beer locations as well, guys. I mean, 4th win for Brandon Grace, and he's sacking down a Sagres in Portugal. I mean, that's strong. That might knock. I was looking at this list and I was like, I've got bed beer, buds. I don't know what that is. And then after that, I've got beer on the honeymoon, Barbados. So I'm like, okay, I can get that one. But I've got Banks. So I assume that was someone who wrote in.
No, that was Banks beer in Barbados. Beer.
That was you.
That's
Banks you then.
Beer in Barbados.
So I've got bed beer. What's bed beer? Just getting the kids to bed and you had a beer.
Yeah,
that's
it's got your. I think it was you. I think it was you. It's got
in an envelope.
It's got your name next to it. Oh, okay. I'll scratch that one now.
Yeah, you can scrap that one.
See, Banks Beer, Barbados. So we've got a good list going. Dazzler, I know it's only been a few days since we had the last podcast, and we're recording this one in advance. Any messages, any writing? I know, guys listening, we appreciate all of the interaction, all of the engagement. I know on my personal channels, I've had some guys get in touch with me and just compliment us on the work we're doing here, which I appreciate that. I can see that the listeners are up. We've had Lloyd shout out that one as well to tell us that we're having a lot more downloads and listens, so we appreciate it. The Dope Stroke podcast, folks, Daryl can tell you everywhere to find it, and I shall allow him to take the floor and close out this week's podcast.
Yeah, to echo what you're saying there, Trottie, we've definitely had a few people email in, a few direct messages, a few messages directly to myself as well. Like you said, complimenting what we're doing. We're obviously doing some things the right way, loving some of the criticism as well. That's generally quite helpful, in particular the Tommy Fleetwood in the top 10. But beyond
that,
yeah, got heat, you said. But Yeah, I think there's definitely guys are quite enjoying the fact that we're bringing bringing the conversation from 3 totally different viewpoints, and just talking about the experiences that we have been able to be able to give the insight that we are. So I'm definitely encouraging of those guys to drop us some notes about what you'd like us to talk about. I know the world rankings one was quite popular. I know the state of golf was quite popular. So yeah, please drop that in. The email address to do so is hello@dopestroke.golf. So please send that through. And on social media, you'll find us at dopestroke.show. But as usual, you can check us out on Apple and Shopify. And again, it is the Dope Stroke podcast. So please go ahead and do that. Well, actually, that's it. That's all I got for you.
You know where to find us, all the usual places. You can get us on your podcast Apple devices. You can get us on Spotify, and also you can find us on YouTube. Until next time, that was episode number 7 or 8.
8.
Can't even remember, but
8.
It's in the books.
Yep.
We'll be back. We've got another guest coming for you, hot and strong, next week. Take care.